All right, guys, welcome to episode 7 of the Hare and Tortoise with Harry at Running to Eat More and myself, Lee Bradbury, the Intrepid Athlete. We've got a couple of good and interesting topics for you today. The first one being looking at ways to stay in a calorie deficit, and Harry's going to be weighing in on his experience whilst he's trying to sort of lean out a little bit more at the moment, obviously to make him even more rapid. And then we're going to talk about agility training for runners. We're kind of going to branch out into a couple of the subcategories like change of direction and acceleration, and just look at whether or not they are beneficial for runners or whether they're applicable to certain disciplines in terms of what runners engage in, whether it's 5Ks, 10Ks, or obviously looking at sort of more slow, long endurance stuff like marathons and ultras. So we'll have some good points to discuss about that, and again, it'll be interesting to talk about Harry's experience with anything in regards to agility work and whether or not he's felt that's helped him run faster. So just to get straight into it then, calorie deficit. So obviously nutritional element is something that you're quite passionate about, obviously built up a bit of experience with, and obviously gained some qualifications in over recent times.
Really in the last kind of year is something that I've really focused on, like not just in terms of what I'm doing, but I just love learning about it. I'm often watching like YouTube videos, looking at articles, looking at experts on different topics. And of course, with nutrition, everyone's got something different to say. Some people are right, some people are wrong. Some people have different methods for achieving things than others, which is totally fine, of course. But yeah, personally, I've been trying to stay in a calorie deficit for the last few months. Why have I been doing that? Well, basically, I had an injury at the start of the year for about 10 weeks, and naturally, well, not naturally for everyone, but me, when I get injured, and a lot of people when they get injured, they like to indulge, basically. They kind of, my mentality is when I get injured, I might as well, sit back, relax. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had like a mental amount of pizzas in that period. It was so bad. But and obviously with that, I'm not exercising. I'm eating all this bad food. I'm going to put on weight. I pretend like it was a ridiculous amount and I was like super overweight or obese or anything like that. But I put on a few kilograms, and that can affect performance quite, not dramatically, but it does affect performance at the end of the day.
Well, absolutely. I think even just from a injury prevention standpoint as well, those extra few kilos are going to mean that you're absorbing a lot more impact through your body as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Like every kilometer just feels more sluggish, heavier, and just as I've been kind of luckily coming down in the last few months, you just feel lighter through the day, and like obviously that impacts on performance as well. So yeah, it really does make a difference. Obviously, you can take it too far, I guess, and be too lightweight. But obviously, as a runner, you want to be as fast as you can. We'll discuss this further, but that doesn't mean I drop all the strength conditioning, drop all the weights. I'm not a big gym guy, as you know, but I'm still doing like classes and like body weight stuff. It's not like that, but yeah, I've been staying in the calorie deficit, which is the main thing. And yeah, I don't actually track my calories because, to be honest, it'd be too time consuming to do that for me. But I know the foods that I eat. It's pretty similar stuff in each one, and obviously adding that to the exercise I do, mainly running, I know that I'm usually going to be in a calorie deficit. Not every day, there will be like outliers, but yeah, most days for the last few months, I'd say I've been in a small calorie deficit every day.
So what sort of weight have you been losing then week to week, roughly?
Yeah, so at my heaviest, I would say I was 72 kilograms. Right now, I weighed myself this morning, I was 64.8. I've actually put on a bit in the last few days. I was 63.
Wow.
But yeah.
So you've lost 8 kilos?
Yeah, 8 kilos in 3 to 4 months, I guess. So
wow. That's a huge amount of weight loss, though. I didn't realize you must have been eating smashing them pizzas then during that injury. You know what I mean?
Mate.
8 kilos, that's some good going, mate.
Oh yeah, it was bad. Don't get me wrong. I was eating so much rubbish. Like I think there was a 8-day period where I had a pizza every day.
Wow.
So it's just stuff like that. And
So,
obviously being a
go on,
sorry,
mate, you go.
I was just going to say being a student as well, it didn't really
Yeah.
help, but yeah.
You just said exactly what I was thinking then. Um, but so obviously that's kind of the total over the last few months. But what sort of weight loss did you average per week then?
Yeah, so I haven't been weighing myself every week. It's only been the last kind of basically I've got these scales at home. Obviously, I've moved home recently, that are more kind of accurate and more reliable. I did have scales at my uni accommodation, but they're basically broken. Like that, you start on 5 kilograms extra than you are, so you've got to take away that from if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I was weighing myself at uni, but it wasn't accurate, so I can't really say, you know, how much I was losing each week. When was the best? If it's roughly 8, is that like 1 kilogram every 2 weeks?
Yeah. So if you said it's about 3 months, didn't you? The weight loss so far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
June. Yeah.
12 weeks.
Yeah. So I basically obviously started when I started running again. So that was like May time, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 8 kilograms. I'm obviously seeing, when you look in the mirror or whatever, certain parts of the body are leaner than they were, which is good to see. Like ab definition is a lot better than it was, obviously a few months ago, which is, a key kind of mark where you're at body weight wise. It
Yeah.
says on the scale 12 point something body fat percent. I think that's a bit low, honestly. Like the scale seemed to over exaggerate. It's probably more like 15, 16%. But yeah, basically, it's going in the right direction. So yeah.
And the thing is with stuff like the body fat percentages on the scales, that is just a number at the end of the day. Like you said, I think, and I'm sure you agree, is one of the best ways to monitor weight loss is through looking at yourself in the mirror, looking at how your clothes fit, taking pictures periodically so you can see objectively changes in your body, how you've gotten leaner or smaller, and obviously measuring if you're that way inclined. Obviously, you're looking at size as well. Then you can measure key areas like the thighs and the waist and stuff to see if you've leaned out in those areas, whilst potentially getting bigger in other if you're in the gym and stuff. So yeah, I definitely think. Obviously, I asked how much you were losing week per week, but I think getting hung up on the scales doesn't necessarily aid in kind of weight loss in general anyway, because you become a bit too obsessed with it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and obviously it is possible to lose to lose body fat and put on muscle. So you can't just look at the number on the scale and think, "Oh, I've put on weight there." It could be muscle. Obviously, you'll know yourself roughly if that is the case or not.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely don't get obsessed with the scales. You can see, as you say, in the mirror if you're going in the right direction. And yeah, a key point which we'll discuss patience is like the main thing, really. You can't expect the results overnight. And yeah, there's a load of tips that we'll go on to about how to stay in a calorie deficit in a healthy kind of way.
So before we go on to those, though, what would be the thing that you found the hardest to maintain your calorie deficit?
That's a good question, that. So to be honest, my whole plan with losing a calorie deficit is to do it in the easiest way possible, to do it in a way that's not painful, and it actually feels like just a normal diet. Um, so like I can't super challenging or anything like that. It's not very hard because my deficits aren't that big. I'm eating, good food, tasty food, healthy food, all that kind of thing. So it's not that hard. Um, the hardest thing, I guess sometimes you have cravings, but at the same time, like the less kind of bad food you eat, the less you crave it anyway. So even that's not a real problem. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say there's been anything that's been super hard, to be honest with you.
There you go. Then I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting you to be saying, "Oh, well, I was struggling not to buy Domino's every weekend or something like that."
Nah, nah. I mean, you
That's
get
some
into a
good
pattern.
discipline there, though, mate.
No, I appreciate it, yeah, but as I said, like you get into a pattern. If I was like eating 2 pizzas a week or whatever, my body almost wants those foods more. Like I can remember when I was eating all those pizzas, like that's all I wanted to eat
Yeah,
every day.
I
But
bet.
now I'm like, I just want something healthy, like salmon or chicken or whatever. So yeah, it's just the more you do with it, the better. I really don't crave anything that's kind of, less nutritionally dense. I still love it, don't get me wrong, but I don't need it, if that makes sense.
Oh, awesome. So let's move on to some of your tips then on how to stay in a calorie deficit. So obviously, like we said, the easiest way to kind of engage in a weight loss journey or leaning out or anything like that is to be in a calorie deficit. But obviously that means eating fewer calories than you potentially used to. So what would you say are some of the best tips that you could give to help people stay on track and stay in that deficit?
Yeah, so like obviously there's a lot out there on how to lose weight and all these diets and all these kind of things, but ultimately it's about energy balance and you've got to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. So your body, for those, not everyone will know what a calorie deficit is, I guess, but basically you've got to, I always get this wrong in my head, but you've got to use more calories than you take in. So like if you eat 2,000 calories and you eat the day, then you're in a deficit of basically like there's a few variables and it can get a bit more precise, but basically that's how it works. And I believe if you get a full deficit of 3,500 calories, say over 7 days, that's equal to 1 pound of fat. I think that's accurate anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you've got to be in a calorie deficit, and there's various ways you can go about it. Um, as I said, I'm trying to be in a small calorie deficit, so it's sustainable basically. So, I could be in a deficit of 1,000, but the chances are the next day or in a few days I'm going to indulge massively because my body's starving. And when your body is starving, it does release these chemicals which make you want to have more food. So yeah, it's just small deficits. Uh, but I'm assuming it's about 200, 300 every day. So yeah, that's just a little tip. Just keep it small. Don't overdo the deficit because it's probably not sustainable. It's not healthy actually because you still need to be getting in, all your vitamins, all your good foods, and all that kind of stuff, no matter what you're doing. So yeah,
And on that point as well, like you said, we only need to be in a certain deficit to start losing weight and obviously leaning out. So potentially by going extreme straight away, you probably may be missing out on some calories that you could actually still eat and be in a deficit at the same time. So again, you're making it more, difficult on yourself than you potentially need to be. So it's much better to maybe be, like you said, a couple of hundred calories, 300 calories short of your maintenance calories, and actually go, well, I'm losing weight, then go straight away, right, I'm going to cut 1,000 calories a day out of my diet. And yes, you might still lose weight, but you then obviously potentially going to feel a lot hungrier and a lot more sort of uncomfortable with the deficit that you're in. And you may actually have gotten
yeah,
away with only taking 500 calories off. So it's much better, I think, to start lower and adjust down and down. If you find that that's not enough of a deficit, then just go straight into extreme levels. Like that documentary that was on Channel 4 recently of giving people 800 calorie a
oh
week,
man.
which is absolutely ridiculous.
Mm.
And again, it's not promoting a good relationship with food either. But yeah, so I think that's a real good tip on, making sure you start small in terms of your deficits. And obviously everyone's individual in how they'll react to that. But yeah, obviously there's calculators and stuff you can utilize online as well to give you a rough idea, but obviously not
Yeah,
exact science. So I think again, you've got to start the process, give it a couple of weeks, see if it takes effect, and then obviously adjust from there. I think, don't you? Would you agree with that?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, being in a small calorie deficit is definitely the way to go. But what I would say is, I'm in a position where I know roughly what I'm going to be eating every day. I
Yeah,
know what foods like roughly the calories are in. I don't count them, but I know like I have the same kind of thing pretty much every day. Same meat, same breakfast, same kind of thing. And not many snacks, or at least the snacks I know what they are, like usually fruit or whatever. So if you are want to be in like this calorie deficit, you've got to remember like everything does add up. Do find yourself like snacking on things through the day. Unfortunately, it does add up, whether it is a chocolate bar or whatever. That doesn't mean you can't have a chocolate bar. You've just got to take it into consideration. I've got into a pattern of routine. I know roughly what I'm having each day. But yeah, you might think you're in a deficit of 200, but actually you're in a surplus of 400 because you haven't counted 3 things you've had that day. So you've got to be kind of careful in that area, but at the same time, don't overdo it as well. Yeah.
Oh, so in terms of tracking, though, you said you don't obviously count them day to day, but did you at least kind of figure out the calorie content for your meals and stuff when you first started going on this sort of weight loss journey, as it were?
Yeah.
Like
So
same stuff day to day. You calculated roughly, what each food was, what each snack was, and then you go, well, I can get away with eating this much to be in a deficit, and then I know I can just replicate that day to day without actually having to count them every day.
yeah, 100%. So like at the start, um, I just look at packets a lot of the time. I just know roughly what it's going to be. Um, you know, you'll have seen my French toast on Instagram. Some people don't think it's very appealing. It might shock people in a way, like I've said it before, but because obviously it's bread, it's carbs. But then if you add the egg whites, add all that protein, and then the low calorie syrups and some fruit, you're going to be full for so many hours. And the way I make it, it's less than 500 calories. So I know it's less than 500. I don't know exactly, but it's less than 500. Um, as I said, keeps me full for hours. It's one meal, and it's got the protein, it's got fruit, it's got syrup, so it tastes good. Tasting good is such a big factor as well, and keeping you on a diet or keeping you in a deficit. There's no point eating rubbish that you're not going to like.
Definitely.
Eventually. So, you got to treat yourself.
Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of people fail as well, is because they try and focus on meal plans rather than kind of maintaining that calorie deficit. They always go straight away, well, what I need is someone to write me a meal plan, on foods that I potentially never eaten, foods that I probably don't even like, but just so that it's just cutting out everything that I'm currently eating, so that I'm going to lose weight, rather than focus on the concept of going, well, I just need to be in a calorie deficit. So like you said, obviously, yes, we're going to try and cut back on some of the less healthy foods, but there's no reason why we can't still enjoy ourselves periodically, so that it helps keep that sanity and helps keep motivation, and less likely, like you said, to then just kind of fall off the wagon, as it were.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Um, you know, as we've just said, like you're not going to sustain, or if it's foods that you don't, really enjoy. So there's 2 things already that you need to kind of take account of. And there's a lot of easy swaps you can make to, still make the food tasty, but helps you be in a calorie deficit. Like there's loads of chocolate bars out there, for example, but some of them are up to 300 calories and some of them are 150. So it's just, all of them are going to taste nice.
Yeah,
And you might have to sacrifice like your favorite one or whatever, but it's still going to taste nice whichever one you use. And oil's a big one for me. Like I use the 1 calorie sprays.
yeah,
Um, so I'll do like 10 sprays, so obviously 10 calories. But if you do say olive oil and you just, lather it on, that can be 150 calories right there. And the meals taste pretty much exactly the same.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, little swaps, um, which is just having more protein and having more fiber in your diet. Protein is super, super satiating. So basically, satiating means how much it fills you up. So like meats and eggs. What else is like protein? Like yogurt, Greek yogurt,
Yeah, you got
stuff like that.
tofu, and legumes and stuff like that have protein for those that are vegetarian or vegan. Yeah, but again, so not only is it going to be good for helping you feel full, but especially because a lot of people we're kind of reaching here are runners, or they train in the gym, or they engage in high levels of exercise, and obviously protein is important for recovery as well. So you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 there with a sort of a slightly higher protein diet.
100%. Yeah, as you say, protein's so important for runners for regeneration, like and regrowth for muscles. You got to get it in your diet. So you don't need as much as maybe you intake if you like a lot of people have too much protein basically because they think, more protein, more muscle. That's not actually the case. Like, I think your body can only digest 25 grams, is it, every few hours? Don't quote me on that, but it basically, if you just eat protein for everything, you're not going to become Mr. Muscle overnight. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing though. Like, it's still going to be satiating, and it's there's a lot of healthy proteins out there. So yeah, that's a big tip. Add in protein and also fiber. Fiber obviously uh, also kind of slows it down and just slows down the whole process. So you feel full for longer, whether that's vegetables or fruit. You can't go wrong adding lots of greens to your diet, whether it is salad or fruit or whatever. Obviously, a lot of people find that boring, but again, there's ways you can spice it up. You can just add a few herbs on it or whatever, or spices, or even, I know some people might find this weird, but I've seen people add like low calorie syrups to like a salad, and like there's nothing wrong with doing that. People worry about chemicals in the syrups and that kind of thing, but there's not much science or journals that support it's actually that detrimental to your health or anything like that. So yeah, just simple swaps. Again, it's got to be tasty. You've got to enjoy it. But yeah, that's another big tip.
Yeah, so on that one as well, like you said, with the spices and stuff like that, making food more interesting. So I know this one costs a little bit of money, but we use a thing called Simply Cook.
Okay.
So basically, it sends you there's loads of recipes you can choose from, and you choose 4 per week, and then they send you the pots of spices and mixes and all that stuff, or stocks or whatever it is to do with that particular meal, along with the recipe card. And then obviously you just follow the recipe, you buy the other ingredients, and you add these pots as per the recipe. And for me, that's transformed, especially vegetables and vegetarian meals. For me, what I wanted to do was try and decrease the amount of meat that I was eating.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to go fully vegetarian or anything like that, but I wanted to eat less meat. So then obviously having just vegetarian based meals. And like you said there, I would really struggle just kind of coming up with ideas of how to make them interesting and exciting. So we used to Simply Cook, and some of the vegetarian meals I've had through that have been some of the nicest things I've ever had. And like you said, it's a way for me to get a lot more greens in. I'm eating vegetables that I wouldn't really have before, like aubergines and courgettes and stuff like that. And also then it tells you how many calories is in the meals and how many is per serving and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little way you could track. And again, obviously it's a bit of a costly thing, but for someone like myself, it's really helped me eat better.
Yeah, that sounds. I might have a look at that myself. It sounds great. But yeah, it's little things like that. Something that can help you enjoy your meals can make such a big difference to how successful you are in staying that deficit. And obviously, not everyone is trying to stay in a deficit, but this is just tips if you are. And another thing that's really helped me, just kind of a mental kind of change or switch, I guess. It's really giving myself a bit of time after a big meal and asking myself, do I actually need like a massive slice of cake after this meal? Or am I satisfied? Am I full now? The cake's going to be nice, but that satisfaction will last a minute, and then what? I'll probably feel bad. Well, not bad, but like it can affect your body and all that kind of stuff. Like I still enjoy it.
Yeah, but that's it again. Like you said, it's sometimes giving it a bit of time after the meal rather than going straight into that dessert can actually make you think, well, yeah, now I've started to digest this food. I don't actually feel like I need anything else.
Yeah.
And it's the same again. I don't know if you've read about this, but in terms of those hunger pangs themselves, sometimes it's a case of, are you actually hungry? Does your body actually need food, or is it kind of again the hormones and the mental aspect that's sort of making you feel hungry? So people say that you should drink like a large glass of water if you feel that coming on, and if you still feel hungry after that, then consume some food. But if you don't, then obviously it wasn't actually kind of true hunger, as it were.
Yeah. I
I know,
mean,
random off topic here, but
no, I totally agree with that. And I think it's important as well to say, I know it's kind of might sound a bit opposite to like the approach here, but if you're feeling hungry throughout the whole day, then you're not doing something right. Like after your meal, you should feel like kind of full or satiated.
Definitely.
Because if you are feeling hungry throughout the day, you are going to indulge and you are going to, um, you know, treat yourself to whatever. So make sure you are full after a meal, or at least, content.
Yeah.
Whether that is adding more greens or vegetables or fruit to whatever you're eating, just
Yeah.
something as simple as that. I found mixing food groups to like, because your body has to separate all these basically. That can really help as well. It's worth noting that each gram of fat is 9 calories, each gram of carbs is 4 calories, and each gram of protein is 4 as well, I think. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously fat's the highest, but that doesn't mean you exclude it from your diet. You still want some healthy fats.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you can get that from nuts or avocados or whatever. But obviously, if it's loads of fats, then it's loads of calories.
Yeah. That's it. Fat's not inherently bad, especially the good types of fat.
Um,
Like I said, they just tend to be higher in calories, don't they? So you've just got to be more aware of it. But you certainly shouldn't be cutting out, especially that and carbs, because they're vital for bodily function as well as brain health.
yeah, and especially as runners, like we need carbs, like to give us energy.
Yeah. Especially shorter distance ones like yourself with 5Ks, 10Ks, where it is more, glycolytic and carb based than fat based that it would be for marathon runners and all that sort of stuff.
Definitely, yeah. If basically what I do if I've got like an intense day with intervals or a tempo run or a race, I'll carb quite heavily, like with whatever it is. But if it's a recovery day or just carbs at all, to be honest, it's fats, proteins, and that kind of thing. So yeah, carbs are very important, especially for the more intense stuff.
Definitely.
Um, what was I gonna say? A
So
lot of it, as sorry, go on.
there you go, mate. I was just going to say what was going to be the next tip.
Oh yeah, so yeah, as we said before, like patience is such a big thing. You might go a few weeks, you might not see, you might be looking in the mirror and you might not see anything happening, or for whatever reason. Obviously, that might be because you're not actually in a calorie deficit, but it could just be um, you could actually be losing weight, but the fat's taking coming off from different parts of the body. This is all genetic, like where the fat comes off first. Like it comes off me mainly in the legs and the kind of arms first, and the last place to go for a lot of people and me is the like belly or the
Yeah.
body, the tummy fat. So you just got to bear that in mind. There's no such thing as spot reducing. Like you can do all the crunches in the world, it doesn't mean you're going to lose fat in your stomach, does it?
True story.
Um, so yeah, it's just patience, and obviously, the more you lose, the slower it's going to kind of be, and the harder it's going to be. Um, but yeah, a lot of it's patience.
Yeah, and I think because the patience comes with trial and error as well. Like you said, for some people who have been, completely on board and honest with the calories that they've taken on board, and they've gone, well, I am in a deficit, but I've still not seen any change in body or in the scales or anything like that. Again, whatever you've used to try and calculate what calories you need to be in a deficit is going to be trial and error. It's not an exact science because everyone is individual. So then it's just a case of monitoring it for a couple of weeks. If there's no change, obviously then adjusting your calorie deficit a little bit further, like we talked about earlier, and just slowly working through and being patient with the process until you get to that point where change starts to happen. And obviously, like I said, yes, a big thing of that is trial and error, but a big thing is you've got to be honest with yourself, haven't you? Are you actually in a calorie deficit? Are you tracking all your calories that you've taken on board, or are you being honest with yourself about what you've eaten day to day and knowing that that is within the deficit that you've planned?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Another thing as well, when you try and lose weight, your body naturally wants to retain water a lot of the time, especially at the start. So your body fat could actually be reducing, but because the water retention is higher, your weight is staying the same. Even though your body fat's going down, your weight stays the same for a bit of time as your body kind of not panics, but wants to hold on to as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to bear in mind as well.
And that's where, like we just said before, about taking measurements, pictures, looking at how clothes fit and stuff is really important as well at tracking progress than just standing on the scales every time.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. You don't want to get obsessed by the numbers. As I said, like I've barely been weighing myself really. Which you could do, to be fair. Like, as long as you're not obsessive with it, you can measure yourself every day. It's up to you. Just don't be, obsessed with the numbers, and because it will fluctuate as well during the day. You've got to bear that in mind. You know, you can easily put on like 1-2 kilograms during the day and then lose it overnight. So it's that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all the tips I can think of right now. I'm not sure. Have you got any other
So I
tips?
think the only one we were going to talk about was walking.
Walking, yeah. So yeah, actually going to be burning calories, whether it's running, walking, cycling, rowing. Cardio is a brilliant calorie burner, and walking is a brilliant underrated tool for doing that. Obviously, you can do it running, but not a lot of. Well, there's a lot of people that don't want to run, and you can just go for a walk, and you'll be surprised how many calories that'll burn. Even just 10,000 steps or whatever. Just a 30-minute walk, you can burn a good amount of calories, whatever weight you are. So I really recommend it. It's low impact as well, mental health and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, go for a walk. It can really help you stay in that deficit. It can actually fight off cravings as well. You might be hungry, go for a walk, and not actually be that hungry when you get back. So yeah, walking's a huge one for me.
And it's a good active recovery tool for running as well.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
It's still
Is that
working the heart and lungs, but at low impact, low intensity. It's a good way to recover after a sort of an interval session, hill session the day before.
Yeah, obviously we're both of our cardio is running, but I'll still do the occasional walk. Do you do much walking yourself?
Yeah, all the time, at least once or twice a week. Like I said, whether it's part of active recovery or just as I just want to go out and enjoy walking. Obviously I go out we're lucky of being in the Lake District. I can, go out the door and be on the fells. So, sometimes I'll just put a backpack on and go for a wander in the hills because it's, like I said, it's good for mental health and all that sort of stuff. And just, I enjoy being outside. So I always factor that into my training. And yeah, like I said, it's just another easy way to burn calories.
Yeah, that is a good point though. We are, there's obviously a lot of like fields and fells and that kind of stuff. Obviously, if you're in like a city like Manchester or London, it's maybe not as appealing or easy for you to do that. But you can obviously still walk. It's just, I understand it might not be as appealing.
Quick 10-20 minute walk around the block, or something like that. That's still going to, again, be an easy way to maintain a deficit, and like I said, just good for general health, providing you're not walking down the side of the motorway.
Yeah, probably not the best idea. But
cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Obviously, if anyone's got any questions about my experiences with calorie deficit, or just any questions for both of us about staying in a calorie deficit, then feel free to ask. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, definitely. I think some people have some good questions, especially because I was surprised straight away by how much you said you've lost. I didn't think you had even that much on you to lose in the first place. So, yeah.
Oh, you'd be surprised. There's still quite a bit of body fat there as well. So, yeah.
Nice. Cool. So, we'll move on then, to a quick one on some agility training. So,
yeah.
What's your experience with agility work in terms of your own training?
Yeah, I mean, the only agility I can think of is from like other sports I've done, really. Like when I did rugby, like sidestepping between people. Tennis, you're obviously moving side to side. Boxing, we did a lot of agility drills. But when I'm talking about running, I can't say I've really done any agility work at all, like any agility drills, because I just don't, in my head, I'm like, surely it's not actually that useful. It doesn't really help cardio system or anything like that, but I'm interested to know more.
So you think you're totally right, but you think, especially with your current level of fitness, and obviously I know you do a lot of running, but do you think that maybe some of that stuff that you've done when you were younger potentially carried over to your ability whilst you were running?
I think that, like I always think like I played tennis basically for a long time, like since I was 5, and rugby when I was a young kid as well. I think you don't think about it at the time, obviously, but just those little movements side and side, probably building up your strength without, and as a kid, you couldn't care less about that kind of thing. But it's probably quite good for you, like just playing those sports, just building up the strength.
Yeah.
So maybe that has helped as I've, progressed into running, but I don't know.
I'd say it has. So, when you and you've done your leadership in running fitness course as well. Obviously, one of the things they talk about on the course is the ABCs as the foundation of running, which is agility, balance, and coordination.
Yeah.
So even on a coaching level, because obviously I've done the coaching course and a few other run coaching courses, they accept that agility is at the foundations of running ability. Because obviously agility is very broad. We all think that agility, we think about the ladders and, like you said, doing change of direction drills and stuff like that. But agility is a skill, and it's something that helps build up hand-eye coordination, hand-foot coordination, all that sort of thing, which obviously if we're looking at improving someone's running technique or running form, that is a skill as well that requires obviously the brain's ability to understand where the hands and feet are in time and space to coordinate them efficiently and therefore move well. So if you think we can use agility, even if it's not necessarily for speed or quickness, as it were, we can use it as a tool to help develop that coordination, and that ability for being able to build up pathways of the brain of understanding where the hand and feet are. And obviously, like I said, being able to coordinate them efficiently, which then can translate as a broad level of training and skill to then hone in more specifically when it goes to, running technique, as it were. That's why team sports use them all the time, because obviously, it's still a run-based sport, but you need that obviously ability at coordination and skill to be able to move a ball, hit a racket or something like that, at the same time. And we still need to be able to do that when it comes to running, because we need to coordinate the arm swing. We obviously need to deal with any terrain that comes in front of us, moving past people, etc. as well. So just as a broad sense straight away, I think agility is quite an important skill for runners to have.
Yeah, because obviously I approach it from a kind of road runner's mindset. So obviously, on a road, you pretty much bang in the same kind of way each step, and it's just like 5K flat out. If you're on like the fells or if you're on a trail, it's going to be different. Like all the foot patterns are different, like you're at different angles. So I guess it's a lot more useful for that kind of thing.
Again, so even as a 5K or 10K runner on road, like we said there, in terms of coordination, so we might be referring more to beginners here who are trying to build up their run technique, their run form. Having some background in easier stuff such as basic agility drills might just be a good way for them to start getting that brain and that motor learning of, like I said, coordinating hands and feet. And then obviously then progressing on to more advanced stuff through run drills and skills and things like that. I'm sure you've seen that amount of people have you seen trying to do A skips. I'm guessing you know what A skips are.
I don't actually.
Basically, it's the high knees, but doing it in a skipping form. So
Okay.
it's quite a popular drill to help develop the knee drive in running, which again obviously is more important for faster runners. But I've obviously run strength runners classes, and I use them sometimes in the warm ups. And you see the people they literally cannot coordinate opposite hand to opposite leg, trying to do an A skip. So that's another term for agility as well. Yes, coordination is a separate skill, but combined really is the ability to move well and coordinate hands and feet at the same time. So you'd be surprised at how many people lack that coordination, and sometimes agility work can be just a good way to help unlock that. So then their run drills become more efficient, and therefore then they are able to become more technique reliant when it comes to their running form. So that's still going to apply even to someone who's on the road, just in terms of their general running form.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting one. I'd probably be the same in terms of coordination. Like I can't imagine my coordination is very good. Whenever I have to do like certain exercises and strength condition, like I struggle a bit on that. So yeah, and I can only imagine. I'm just thinking like, so would you recommend then, like for a 5K runner, would you recommend to do like agility drills like twice a week? Like what would you kind of say?
So in terms of what you're actually doing, so you've got to think, one, we've got the coordination element, two, we've got the durability element that you can get from certain agility drills. So you think, running is quite a heavy impact sport. We rely a lot on the calves and the Achilles and the quads to absorb impact, even if we're not changing direction. All right, obviously those muscles are still working, but also we are resisting forces from other planes of motion as well. Even if you are running on a road in a straight line, you are still resisting rotation, lateral flexion, things like that as well. So agility is another way to train to be strong and durable in those other planes of motion. So absolutely, you want to maybe incorporate some form once or twice a week in your strength work. It doesn't need to be lots of stuff, and it certainly doesn't need to be agility ladders. You know, they look cool for Instagram and all that sort of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. However, from my experience, I found agility ladders have been a really good and fun way for us to do our agility training. You know, so obviously the whole concept behind them was to improve speed and quickness, which has kind of been debunked. So I use them purely for a fun way of developing hand-eye coordination, hand-foot coordination, as then a precursor to looking at, you know, improving that agility when it comes to running. And, you know, so we do it every week in our classes. We do some form of agility or change of direction or plyometrics just to help improve, like I said, that skill of coordination and balance as well. Like I said, it's another way to improve foot and ankle stability as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, running economy is such a big thing when you get into kind of the longer distances, especially. But even for like a 5K, it can be so important. So something like that can probably help running economy in a big way.
Absolutely. If you run more efficiently, you take less energy to take every stride, or your techniques become more efficient, so it demands less oxygen from the body. Even over 5K, that could still increase in, you know, a 1 to 2% improvement in performance, which is still seconds off your time, which over a 5K is actually quite a big deal, isn't it? You know, as you start getting to kind of your level, where you're looking at 15, 16 minutes and lower, seconds off your time is actually quite a big deal.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like you're just looking for any kind of second you can get.
Yeah.
I'm working with a brand called Prehab. I think I spoke about, and they've done a gait analysis basically. So looked at the way I run, um, and yeah, it's all about improving the running economy. Can improve the running economy and doing certain exercises, certain stretches. And I'm already. It'll take a while before I feel like get the full benefits, but I'm already feeling kind of more natural and
Yeah.
just better out on the run. So yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah, and that's again, that's one of the goals of strength training is to help improve running economy, and agility is just an extension of that. You know, like I said, it's just for me, it's a good fun way because especially a lot of people don't like yourself. You don't enjoy the gym, you don't really like going in just to lift weights and stuff like that. So like that's where agility training can be almost a little bit of a form of strength work as well. You know, especially looking at stuff like plyometrics. So you know, depth jumps, drop jumps, hurdle jumps, stuff like that. That is still a form of agility because you're focusing on, you know, jumping, landing, obviously absorbing impact forces and then transferring them into movement, which is what we do when we run. So it's just a broad way of helping you be more resilient as a runner.
Yeah, plyometrics is definitely something I want to kind of do myself and get into. In my head, this might not be what it is, but in my head, let me know if I'm wrong. Like a lot of movements, like you put pressure on one side, then you bounce off to another, and that kind of stuff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so plyometrics is essentially loading up your Achilles and
Yeah.
then utilizing the energy from that to propel yourself, whether that's forward, sideways, etc., etc. So the
Mm.
Achilles tendon is able to store quite a lot of elastic energy, but for a brief period of time
Yeah.
before it starts to dissipate. So what we want to try and do as runners is take advantage of that stored up energy every time our foot hits the floor to then essentially get free energy because this elastic energy doesn't cost oxygen. It's not
Mm.
taking any calories from you. It's not taking any energy from your body. It's free. There's no cost to using that energy, but we've got to be efficient at actually, like I said, utilizing it before it dissipates. Plyometrics is one of the easiest ways to help build up your body's ability to use that elastic energy. So
Yeah.
again, like I said, it's essentially jumping. That's what if you want to simplify it, it's forms of jumping, but where you're utilizing that what we call that stretch reflex component. So stuff like high box jumps, what you see people trying to do on Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff, isn't necessarily as beneficial. Apologies, my phone's ringing. Sorry.
So,
But yeah, so first time I've got a landline in the house now. But so, like I said, that won't be as beneficial as doing something like where you said there, jumping, landing, and then jumping again, where you've absorbed those impact forces into the Achilles tendon and then use them again to then propel yourself forward in a jump or a lateral movement or something like that. So that's what we mean by plyometrics. So it's bounding, hurdles, side jumps, jumping off a box onto another box, etc., etc., rather than just doing a simple jump up or down.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I guess it's in a way mimicking, the art of running, like because obviously with each step you're going to be putting a large force on your body. So something like plyometrics is brilliant at kind of getting you used to kind of a higher force. Well, I'm not. Would it be higher than running? Because I guess you're obviously going at speed.
So
But I guess similar.
yeah, so again, you think though you're running at speed, but it's still essentially a single leg hop every time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, the force of those hops might not be as sort of applicable to when you're doing plyometrics, but this is a good general way of, like you said, creating that sort of that strength and that ability in the Achilles and in the calf and the foot before you go into more specific stuff through running. Definitely.
Yeah. I'll just end on this final question then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've wrote basically a few things down here that you can do as a runner. You can obviously do your running training. You can do stretching. You can do strength conditioning, which kind of ties into like plyometrics and that kind of thing. What would you say? Like people are busy, people are working and all that kind of stuff, so they don't have much time, I guess. What would you kind of say that are main things if you want to become a better runner that you should be doing? Obviously, running's going to be up there, but should it be core work, for example? Should it be plyometrics? Should it be, preferably we do all these things, but we're not like pro athletes or even close. What do
So
you kind of pick out of all those things?
so to be honest, you need to do everything. But that's where then having a structured periodized training program comes into play. So if we're in an off season, I know runners don't have as much of an off season, but especially if you're a beginner, you want to build some general strength, through basic bodyweight exercises, maybe looking at some dumbbells and barbell stuff. But again, depending on what you want to commit to strength work and what what you enjoy in terms of strength training, you want to be doing some form of general strength work. Nothing that's really as applicable to running, but helps build neuroplasticity, helps build coordination, general strength, and just the ability to absorb and produce force. Because again, we still do that in running. So that can be at a point where you're just starting to build up your base mileage and things like that. You're doing lots of easier running. And then as obviously the intensity of your running increases or the distance you run increases, depending on which distance you're doing, then you can start looking at kind of going more specific with your strength work and utilizing plyometrics. So you still want a good solid strength foundation before you go into plyometrics because they are more impactful on the body and they do cause, like I said, a little bit more soreness and stuff. So that's where you can then focus on utilizing phases of training. So you could have a general strength phase alongside some easy running, and then more of a specific strength phase against some more intense running or intervals and things like that, where you then incorporate in the plyometrics element. So that's the easiest way to try and get everything in. And alongside all of that, you can include core, because core doesn't demand as much from recovery anyway, in terms of that muscular soreness. So you can include core in multiple sessions or as a standalone. Even after a run, you could incorporate some core. But for me personally, every single runner, in my opinion, should be doing some form of strength training, obviously alongside their running, and then periodically including some form of plyometrics to help improve run economy, strength of your Achilles tendon, which can obviously help improve force production, which again is another way to improve run economy.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. Realistically, if you had to guess, I can't imagine most runners are even doing more than just general running training, to be honest, including, I do a bit of workouts, but not much. So
yeah, so again, you think about, so let's look at Mo Farah. Mo Farah was obviously a hell of a short distance runner, in terms of 10,000 meters and stuff like that. And one of the big things that he changed in his training when it started to lead up to kind of Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games and stuff like that was he incorporated more strength work into his training. His technique was amazing already. His run technique was spot on. So therefore his cadence and all that stuff's probably going to be bang on. So one thing he wanted to be able to do was, right, okay, well, every time I hit the ground, I want to be able to produce more force. So then it takes less energy so I can run faster at a less of a cost. And obviously speed work and all that stuff is one of the more specific ways that we can do that. But if we want to tap into that ability, we need a little bit more kind of said, neuromuscular strength, as it were, having those pathways built up in the legs already to be able to access that extra speed and then obviously become more economical with it. So he just started to incorporate more squats. You know, he built up to a point where he could squat his own, double his own body weight. And that improved his ability to produce force, his run economy, and just made him a faster runner.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
not that you can't be a great runner without it. It's just, like we talked about in other episodes, those 1% to 2% changes could be that missing link in hitting that next level of your training. And sometimes it doesn't come from just going, well, I'm going to run more, I'm going to run faster, or I'm going to try and put more volume into my training of running. It could be a case of, well, I'm not doing any strength work at the moment. So think about yourself. If you've not really done that much strength work, think about just how much gains you could get quite quickly in strength, just over a 4 to 6 week period. And straight away, that would probably improve your running without actually that much effort. And we're not talking about, like I said, I'm not talking about powerlifting or anything like that. I'm just talking about moving your own body with some external resistance that's challenging for the prescribed repetitions. You know, we're not talking about bodybuilding and stuff like that. But again, that could be just a missing link for you in terms of getting extra 10, 20, 30 seconds off your 5K time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I don't want to be going to a gym really. Like, I'd love to have kind of big weights at home and that kind of stuff, but obviously I can't afford that. But
yeah,
I know how important it would be.
Quite useful, you know. It's not ideal, but you're still going to get some gains. You know, it will become redundant relatively quickly, but there's still lots of ways you can progress exercises with resistance bands and change the positions of movements or the levers and things like that to make them more challenging without having to use external load. It's just doing it. That's the key. Even body weight, like I said, if you've not really done much, just doing some body weight training, but challenging yourself through different, you know, if you're doing squats all the time, how many, you know, if they're feeling easy in terms of bodyweight squats, an easy way to change it is to then focus on doing eccentrics, you know, so slowing down how long it takes you to lower to the bottom of the squat and then pausing there for a couple of seconds. So if you're banging out sets of 8 to 10 bodyweight squats and they're feeling really good, go slower. Take 3 or 4 seconds on the lower end, pause for a couple of seconds, and straight away there you'll increase the demand on strength and obviously then improve performance without having to change anything other than just the time it takes to complete a rep.
Yeah, brilliant. It's a really interesting topic, and again, it's something a lot of runners won't be doing because, you know, for whatever reason, time or money or just lack of knowledge as well. But yeah, it's very clear now that we all should be doing it for a variety of reasons. But
yeah, again, it's, you look at the pros, mate, and they've been doing it for a long time. All the pros have S&C coach. I know we're not pros, but if it's good enough for them, just like we talked about other stuff, it's good enough for us. And there are lots of different ways to attack it and lots of exercise variations. And again, if you're not, you know, not confident with that, all you got to do is follow my channel and you'll be able to see lots of stuff on there.
It's a good plug for that.
And if you live in the lakes, I run 2 classes a week, so you can come. Seriously, I think, like I said, strength training is important. Even if you don't believe in terms of run performance, just as an injury prevention, it can't be refuted as a way to help minimize the risk of injuries associated with running, which is one of the most injurious sports out there.
100%. I think that's a good way to end it as well as we approach the hour. Two really interesting topics there, you know.
Yeah.
I learnt a lot with the agility, and hopefully you learnt a lot.
Well, definitely. Like I said, there's nutrition
side of things
anyway, and also it's just interesting to see how much you love pizza.
Oh man, that was a rough time though. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'm glad we're back to where we should be now.
Cool.
But yeah, thanks again to anyone that's watched. Check us out on all the socials; they'll be linked down below. And if you've got any questions or any topics or anything, please let us know. That would be awesome. Anything to add, Lee?
No, same. Like I said, it's, you know, we enjoy doing these, and just be great to get some more input from people in terms of what they'd like to see us talking about.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thanks again, Lee, and we'll see you next time.
Cool.